staff as well as the students. And I think
Yes.
what you just mentioned, with all the challenges, there are great opportunities. And this is also something I'm looking forward to in our call today.
Yeah. So I'll let you and Malini chat, because I have to while you people are getting ready to start with the students, I have to finish a document for the next meeting.
Good.
In my house, my husband is on a Zoom call right now. My daughter is also studying. So everyone is using the internet. So in between, my voice starts dropping. So I'll just switch off the camera. If need be, then I'll switch it on. Okay?
Good.
Bye.
Great meeting you.
Same here.
Yeah. So Michael, just as a brief as to what we do, Fashion Design, NIFT is a College of Design Management and Technology. We have several streams of, or several disciplines. Today, I chair the fashion design department, and today I have fashion design students who are across all 15 campuses joining us in this particular discussion, to hear you out. So I've noticed that your work with denim is so interesting. Like how Vandana said, deconstruction has been one of the very interesting areas for fashion design students generally. And then, when we've seen your work of textures and on denim, so it's very interesting, and I'm sure the students would love this session that way. So currently, it's a 4-year program that we have, and the first year is a common platform of a foundation program for all disciplines. We have knitwear, we have leather, we have textile, we have accessory, we have fashion communication under the design disciplines, and then we have these are all the undergraduate programs. Then we have a management program, which is called the Fashion Management Studies, which is a postgraduate program. We have masters in design. And then, these are, and masters in technology. We also have a bachelor's in technology in fashion, completely related to fashion. So today we will have the fashion design students joining us from across the country, or in here listening to you. Any questions that you would want to ask me before?
So far, not. Looking forward to the call.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Virendra, are they joining? Students are joining?
Yes, ma'am. Already joined, and YouTube also live broadcast.
Okay. How many are there right now?
Yeah, 101 in Zoom and.
Okay. ठीक है. So हम शुरू कर सकते हैं ना अभी?
Yes.
Yes, हम शुरू कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, Michael, we are ready to start. I would just give a brief introduction about you, and then we would start off. A very warm welcome to all my colleagues and students. Hope you're all keeping safe and doing well. Fashion, a glamorous word, a creative thought, a challenging field, and a dynamic business that is fluid in nature is what binds us all together at the Fashion Design Department, NIFT. On this remote platform here today, we connect to discuss this versatile design stream with respect to its prospects, challenges, and possibilities that we may face in the current and the approaching times. In this discussion, we have with us Mr. Michael Campe, Creative Director, Lee Jeans at Antwerp, Belgium, to share his views on the future of fashion in the post-COVID era. Mr. Campe pursued fashion design education at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp. Prior to his work with Lee Jeans, he headed the design departments at Hugo Boss in Germany, Scotch and Soda Amsterdam, and Diesel Spa Brengase, Italy. From his experience, we get to understand that his specialty lies within denim, and deconstruction is his forte. Mr. Campe is also won the many awards. A few are International Talent Support Award in 2010, which won him an internship at Diesel. International Fragrance Foundation Award in 2010. Create Europe International Fashion Design Award finalist in 2009. These are just to name a few. Mr. Campe is also actively involved in teaching at various fashion schools globally. A few such workshops that he has held are Experimental Jacket and Urban Jeans at Head Geneva, taking outerwear apart, deconstruction as the basis for innovation, deconstruction performance, responsible functionality at Academy of Fashion and Design, Düsseldorf, denim design and collection design between Avantgarde and Global Corporation at Academy of Fashion Design, Hamburg, outerwear deconstruction as an inspirational source for sustainable design solutions, design for change, social sustainability in design education from vision to product and distribution at DSK Denmark, historical hybrid, reconstruct and future past at Shenzhen University, Taipei, Taiwan. He also has many publications to his credit, a few of which the titles are Documenting Style 2012 Survival Kit Issue, I Am Into Creativity, Novel Vogue, the cultural landmarks that inspire this new crop of international fashion visionaries all over the map in a best way possible, The Fundamentals of Fashion Design, Crazy Fashion. Now, these are just a few. This is chapters in books and papers. Welcome, Michael, for this session, and really thankful to have you here. And we are looking forward for a very enriching session. We also have Dean NIFT, Professor Dr. Vandana Narang. Dr. Narang has a long run of academic career at NIFT and was involved in grooming several batches of students over the past 30 years. Her involvement with the fashion design department has been long, and she is known for her passion towards pattern making. A strong academician, Dr. Narang has also held several administrative positions prior to her current position as dean. She's also the director at the NIFT Delhi campus. Thank you for taking your time and being available on this platform, Dr. Narang. While I request Mr. Michael to commence his talk on the future of fashion in the post-COVID era, I request all the audience to send their questions in a written format, and it would be answered at the end of the session. On to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Malini. Thank you all at NIFT for having me. I'm looking forward to the next hours to hear your questions, to share my point of view. And I prepared a little overview that I'm now trying to share my screen with you. Let me know if something is not working, but let's see if this one shows it. Are you all able to see it properly?
Virendra, they can all see, right? I can see.
Yes,
Great.
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you for the confirmation. So as Malini said, the future of fashion in the post-COVID era. Just a quick reminder, what Malini already mentioned about myself and my career in the fashion industry. It started here in 2007 in Antwerp at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, where the studies is very like on the individual, creating individual designers. And then through a contest called ITS, International Talent Support in Italy, I won an internship at Diesel in north of Italy. There was also the first time when I learned more about the whole industry that is behind fashion, and also what we're looking in today's talk, how that whole industry, how the whole society, and this is also the two different pillars, how I spread the next slides, are infected by COVID and what we will be looking into after the post-COVID era. After Diesel, I moved to Scotch & Soda in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. What is interesting with all the brands that I've been working for is that they are been sold globally, but the system that they're working is a omni-channel system. So they're selling via their own stores, they're selling via partner stores, and they're selling via online. And especially the last point, the online sales, the whole digitalization, the way we talk today, just right now, is very much infected also by COVID-19. After 2 years at Scotch & Soda, I went on to work as a head of design for Hugo Boss in the south of Germany. Again, a global brand. Some of you might have heard the brand. It's very known for tailoring. It's very known for occasion wear. Again, super important for today's talk. Personally, I see there will be a decrease in occasional in tailoring, but about that point a bit further later on. And the latest position I've been working on, as Malini mentioned, was the creative director for Lee Jeans. What is interesting is within the role of a creative director is that you have to think from the concept, the research, the design, the theme, the whole storytelling, but include all the different other departments. So include the department such as merchandise, development, and marketing. And all these different departments, just as design, are very much affected by COVID-19, have been affected and will be affected. So the way that I spreaded the theme now and the way I grid it is, first of all, what we all know, this crisis, this virus is a global crisis. That's the first time since maybe in 2008, 2009, when there was the big financial crisis we had, the first time after the end of Second World War, when there was a global impacting crisis hitting us. And that should just show us how big the scale of this one is. It has been hitting in different areas of the globe differently strong. Talking from Belgium, we have been doing okay. Europe has been doing all right. Germany, where I'm born in, has been doing really good. There are countries such as Iceland, which have been almost not infected at all or impacted by this. Other areas such as Italy, you might have seen the international news, has been hit very hard. Italy, again, a great place and country with a big history for fashion, has been hit very hard. Spain has been hit very hard. And now it's just slowly, again, the time that businesses are opening up again, literally. Like last week here in Antwerp, they have been opening up stores again. But you feel that the mentality, the desire to shop, at least over here in Europe, has been decreasing. It has been also made more difficult, of course, because there is more security and safety regulations you have to keep in mind. People have to disinfect their hands before they enter, wear a mask, and you're not allowed to try on garments. So this, together with the financial impact the crisis has on all of us, is of course something that is bringing something like the fashion industry, design, under a lot of pressure. But this was one main thing where I wanted to talk about in our call now. And as this is such a big theme and it has such a great scale all over the world, I don't think we can discuss today everything, but I want to use today for hearing your questions, hopefully being able to answer most of them and start the conversation, because out of the conversation, great solutions can happen. And as we've been saying before, we see that there is a great challenge right now, but in every challenge, there has always been opportunity. This is what happened after wars. This is what happened after economical crisis. There has always been the opportunity in seeing what can be done, what can be changed after the crisis is hitting us. And as it's such a big theme and such a big, grand topic, I split it into 3 parts. It's split and broken down into who is actually affected. Like, this whole industry is very big. So again, here I just pulled out a few like touch points. Who is affected by it? How are these touch points affected? And what can we do? Like, what will be the challenges? What will be, again, like the measurements that are being taken to overcome these challenges? And what are these opportunities that can derive from them? Inspiration behind this is a sociologist by the name of Simon Sinek. His theories is not only related to fashion, but has also for me been very, very great to see and great to understand, was a theory called Start with a Why. And it basically describes 3 balls, and in the middle ball there's the why as a question mark, and the round ball there's the how, and in the outer shell there's the what. So also when you're thinking about your design themes, for example, try as a challenge for yourself, not to only think about the what you're actually doing, but why are you doing it? Why are you choosing this theme? Why are you choosing this fabric? And go from the inside out instead of the outside in. So he starts with the why, how, and what is something designed, is a marketing campaign designed. And I use this as an inspiration for today's talk, together with all of you, to start with who is affected by COVID, who will be looking into the post-COVID-19 era, how are these different areas affected, and what will be upcoming challenges and solutions. If we look into the who, I again split it into an industry side and a society part. If we look into the industry, who is infected by it, and again, we cannot cover everything, but I thought those 6 are very relevant for us today and for students thinking about where they want to go after the studies, what they want to do within the studies. And if we look into the industry side of it, it's very much the brands, of course, the companies, the designers, it's the suppliers, and it's the retailers. If we look into the society element from it, it's the consumers, it's the environment, and it's the education. If we look into industry, it's how I mentioned before, who I mentioned before. It's the brands, it's the designer labels. It are also global chains. There are brands which are within big conglomerates, like, for example, you heard of LVMH, Kering. These are all conglomerates that own several design brands, independent labels, and licensees. All of these have been affected. Some have been hit heavier than others. Some even had the opportunity to grow within this post-academic, this crisis, and are now post-COVID-19 stronger than ever before. For example, think of Amazon. Due to the reason that consumers had to buy from home, they grew extremely, whereas typical retail was very heavily hit. They were not able to open their doors to welcome customers. So if we look into the brands, also here you could include very young upcoming designers. You can include global chains that have their own production. For example, look into big players would be Carrefour, Marks and Spencer, like all big chains that have their own production at the side and have their own house labels. Second part, of course, very much depending, where very much these brands are depending on, are the suppliers. So that's also why I put them in such an order, because what we will see very much in this crisis is that it's a long red thread, and it's almost round because it's affecting all the different elements. So if you look into, on the industry side, the suppliers, it's where we're talking about the vendors, people that produce the garments. We're also looking into the mills that are producing the fabric, the yarns. We're looking into trim suppliers, as well as how agencies who are distributing these fabrics, for example, are affected, how fabric fairs are affected, how finishing factories like laundries, especially for denim, for example, but also in leather tanning facilities, they're all super heavily affected. And I can just, to give you an example, always try to relate it back to the latest brand I've been working with. So what I've been seeing in who has been affected, and just under this point of the suppliers, in Lee, we were just sending out a summer collection, for example, when we were told that our stores are closed, our partner stores are closed. Only channel of distribution that was still open was digital. But for the upcoming collections that were just about to come into the stores, our suppliers, of course, had already finished everything. But we had no opportunity, not even literally a space to sell what they have been producing. And this also happens in big scale, where you see like global chains, for example, Primark is an example, produced millions of goods, and they have no opportunity to sell their garments because Primark didn't even back then have an e-commerce, like a way to digitally sell their garments. They only rely 100% on their own retail, so on brick and mortar, the store on the street. If those stores are closed and you don't know when they can reopen again, there's no need to have new garments, of course. So it's the whole crisis is influencing everyone, where we were not in the need of receiving new garments. Our suppliers could not finish all of them because the factories were closed. And for example, even in the case that they reopened again, like in China, who was the first one, for example, they were not able to receive the fabrics they needed because in the country where the fabric was produced, still the mill was closed, or the garment was finished or was stitched, but you could not finish it. You could not wash it because the laundry was still closed. And this is a big, big circle that is influencing every single part, ending up at the retailers, of course. I mentioned before, if a company, such as the ones also I was working with in the past, is very much relying on retail, on these independent stores, just as much as retail chains, for example. We see here a picture of Macy's, just as much as e-commerce and commodity-driven chains. The moment that these are closing down, of course, you don't have any business. You cannot sell your goods. It even gets worse because your inventory, your stock, like all the goods you produce, it's growing. It's growing, 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 and you have been making your calculation in a way that whenever something is growing, you are selling it out. So it's like a good stream of producing, selling, but the moment there's no selling, there's just producing, or there's very little selling through e-commerce, what you have been producing, what you're waiting to receive, is growing to an extent that you don't even have the space to stock it, to save all the goods that have been paid, to produce that, for example, factory workers have been paid for. The fabrics have been paid for. So it's not as easy as saying, we're not taking it. Some brands tried, and especially in today's times where news and rumors and sometimes also true rumors are communicated in such a speed thanks to social media, those brands have been criticized very heavily because they literally wanted to cancel all their orders. But this, again, comes from the retail, goes back, or comes from retail to brand to the supplier. But the supplier then in the end, they put all their efforts, all their time, all their money, all their pay slips that have been paid for the workers, they put it in there. So they cannot just say, okay, we accept your cancellation and that's it. That's not that easy. So this is how everything goes back, how we will be seeing winter-ready garments to be sold in the summer collection and vice versa. It's really much going back and infecting about 2 to 3 seasons, we've been saying, and seasons being here summer, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer. So most likely it's reaching back in the development until spring, summer 21 at least, maybe even fall, winter 21. And this is about 2 years of work for a company. So if you think of companies, retailers, suppliers putting in 2 years of their work into something that they will hardly sell, and gives a bit of an idea how heavy the financial impact is. If this are the 3 who are impacted on the industry side, if we look here at the e-commerce and the digital titans, these 2 are the ones that basically, I believe, profited from this crisis, because not only due to the time or within the time crisis hit us very hard and we were not allowed to go to stores, people had to buy online if they wanted something they couldn't get from, for example, in Europe, only grocery stores were allowed to be open. But let's say your phone breaks down and you really need to do a call, then you cannot go to a grocery store. So even if you would never wanted to buy digitally, or if you never wanted to order with an Amazon, for example, or an Alibaba, you had to do this step. And what we're very much expecting now is that even these people who always said we will never buy digitally, and they were forced within this crisis to do this step, there will be many of them who then felt like, oh, actually it's quite easy. I didn't like it, I could easily return it. So those people will rather return than that they will go back 100% back to the traditional classic way of consumption. So we saw that within the crisis, there was a huge growth within e-commerce and for these digital titans being Amazon, Alibaba. But also we will see that after the crisis, the growth will not be as high, but it will be still bigger than it was before that. Commodity-driven chains are chains very much in countries such as the US, where you can buy from fashion to household goods to groceries, everything. And these are big chains such as Walmart, for example, where they sell also groceries and fashion clothing. So these chains had an exception. They were allowed to keep their stores open, to keep selling also fashion because they were selling groceries. And these stores will also have had more of a positive impact from this. If we see on the other side, on the societal impact side, within the society, who is impacted? The consumers, of course, our psychology, our feeling for freedom, the feeling for security, and in general, how we're used to shop, how we're used to consume. Also, what we're used to wear, for example, especially in the Western world, especially in also more conservative countries such as in Poland, Germany, also in the US, there was still today a big culture for businessmen wearing suits. And this is something that you have been seeing even before Corona, has been decreasing. It started with something like a casual Friday, not always the need to be wearing a full 3-piece suit, 2-piece suit. Now that we've been all working from home, this shift away from occasion wear, shift away from typical office wear and office attire towards almost a more democratic, casual way of dressing is something that has been seeing a great growth within the crisis and is also something that I believe will continue. It also had, of course, a big impact on the psychology, on the security feel of us all, of the society as them. We have been seeing great examples of where people started supporting each other. People started going grocery shopping for someone sick in the house they shared living with. And overall, we feel that there was ideally more that brought us closer together, more that grew proximity within the society than that was bringing us apart. Of course, on the other hand, if you're looking into the psychology, into the security side from it, again, something especially in the Western hemisphere, shaking hands, hugging. If you look into Paris, where I put the picture on there, you saw these empty squares, empty streets. In Paris, also in Belgium, it's very typical that you kiss each other on the cheek 3 times. I'm very doubtful that this will very soon pick up the way it was before the crisis. People also started literally taking in this social distancing and in the way they meet, the way they have conversations between another, and the way that you see them on the streets. Still today, for example, in Belgium, public spaces such as bars, restaurants, cafes are closed. So also here we will see, next to the economical impact the crisis will have, not all of these bars and facilities will survive the crisis. We will see that people will not sit as close and eat as close together as they used to. Within the society, also I wanted to raise who is impacted within environment. And it's very much looking into how production has been impacting environment in the past and how it might impact it in the future. Again, here, challenge, measurement, and opportunity. How shipping companies have been forced to heavily reduce the impact they have on the environment, how nature and infrastructure are impacted by the crisis, and how we can see again here an opportunity to maybe keep the momentum going that was actually helping nature, but also what is, in terms of sustainability, going to be a big challenge for us in the post-COVID era. As the last point, who is impacted, and as we're having the call with all of you today and with the teachers and the professorship from NIFT, I wanted to include also the big part of education. And that's very interesting, especially for the students that are listening today. You are the post-COVID generation in a way. So a lot of people will look into, when you apply for a job, they will look into what have you been doing in these times? How have you creatively used this crisis, and again, like saw a positive, constructive opportunity within the challenge. And it will impact within the education, of course, you students. It will also impact the graduates very much, the job environment and the way to apply for a job interview, the way maybe also the design job is being handled from day to day will be different. How the schools, how your tutors, how the tutors globally are reacting to this, and how young professionals, people who just graduated, people who are just within their first internship, who just got out of the internship into a junior designer position, for example, are impacted by this, will all be seen in the next steps. After the who, I wanted to raise and discuss with you the point of how. And again, all these points I'm mentioning are points for our later on discussion. In case you have questions on this, I'm, like I said, happy to try and answer these. Again, how are these different points impacted? I mentioned some elements before. Again, we look into the industry side and the society side from these. And if we look at the industry side, how the brands are impacted. I mentioned it before, their point of sale, their POS is closed. So there's no opportunity to sell goods to make money. Basically, it's also the point that the produced goods cannot even be shipped. So it can be that there might even be a need to sell via a different channel, such as e-commerce, but there is no opportunity to receive goods because it's not allowed to ship out of a heavily Corona impacted country into another country that closed also the borders of accepting goods. There will be, of course, due to this, a big loss in value, and there will be literally lost seasons. So while the seasons in nature are going on, the seasons in design have been developed, again, talking about Lee Jeans, have been developed for a pre-spring, a summer season, a pre-fall, a winter season. But the last 3 months that our store was closed, for example, we lost the full pre-fall season. And it was a beautiful collection because my team and I, we put so much effort in it, and great concept, great product. But in the end, we totally missed these 3 months where you could sell the collection. So the moment you miss this window of selling, you could still say, yeah, maybe we keep some of these elements and we keep them for later. This is something I think very logical to consider and to make usage of. But basically, you will not, in general, sell as much as you have been predicting 6 months before everything happened. New tech, digital platforms is something that is going more into the opportunity and into the measurements that have to be taken. For example, you see in China, there's a lot of designers facing the new crisis and the challenge by creatively answering it via selling through TikTok, for example, through selling via a digital video, even made in their own atelier, in their own studio, in the workshop. And everyone's now trying to find a new, interesting, desirable angle to still sell garments, ideally even sell more, and use new technology, make usage of digital platforms. And what we will see on the garment side, on the fashion design side, is what I mentioned before. There's the decline of occasional wear, so very classical wear, very tailoring, suiting, office wear, and the comfort, which has been key and which has been growing the last years already. We've seen it in streetwear, in loungewear. There was over from America to Europe, there was a big trend called the normcore, everything a bit oversized, everything a bit more relaxed. Is something that, yeah, if people work from home the last month, they will most likely, or not many of them, will dress up fully and will rather stick to this very comfortable way of wearing and to the comfortable attire as well. The suppliers are impacted in a way that there are cancellations, there are payments being skipped by their clients. They will not be able to hit the deadlines because, for example, they're impacted by a mill, or a vendor is impacted by a mill that cannot deliver the fabric. They will have a massive overstock, which they, again, if we're talking about a vendor, have been paying bills for, which they, again, have been weaving, if we talk about a mill, in advance, because they had these orders from the brands or from the retailers almost a year ago that said, we need 10,000 yards of this fabric. So the factory starts as soon as possible weaving this fabric. Now the brand might say, this retailer closed, we don't need 10,000 yards anymore, but the mill already produced everything. So what to do with this? They only have to go into then down pricing everything. I am also convinced that the next month we will see a huge competition within sales and down pricing. Everything will be made super, super cheap because companies can just not afford having all this stock, all this overproduced garments, products and units in their warehouses. And it will also lead to an unfair competition against or between the different countries. Like some countries have been hit very hard, some have been hit less hard. So if before there was not always the greatest balance in fair competition, due to COVID-19, there's just another element that is adding up to it. Retailers are impacted. How are they impacted? By the forced closure, by a further rise of digital. So again, on the positive side, for digital retailers or for retailers that are also selling via e-commerce, but for the brick and mortar, the traditional stores, which you visit as a consumer, where you can touch the garments, you can try on the garments, they will make huge losses. And even here in Antwerp, I can see already, going through the shopping streets, I can see already every 10th to 15th store being closed. There will be a new normal in how we're consuming, how we are entering stores, how we're buying product. There will be a lot of promotions. Like I said before, there's a big discount culture, which a lot of brands and designers will start to now use to at least make some money, but which in the long run will make the whole value of the brand, the value of the designer, very, very cheap. Just imagine a designer who would normally sell a t-shirt for $100, produced so many t-shirts that she needs to sell it for $50. 2 seasons from now, a consumer who bought that t-shirt for $50 and she wants to raise the price again to $75, $80, there will be some consumers who will be saying, last time I bought this from you for $50, I don't understand why I should now pay double or 50% more. So there's a big risk within this discounting culture. Will not be able, at least this is something I see here in Europe, you're not able to try on garments in the store. This is again like leading into a decrease of haptic understanding for fabrics, for fabrications, for garments, something that I see also as a risk within education, which is something that I'm going to mention later on. And an understanding that maybe some of you have read the article about Gucci reducing their seasons and stuff. There will be an understanding that people start questioning how much do we really need? Do we really need to order that many garments if we already know that most likely we will not sell all of them? How can we down price? How can we, if we need to run sales, do it in a clever way, in a way that is not harming the company in the long run? And if we look into society, into how consumers are impacted by this, it is sicknesses that, of course, came up to us that our grandparents were maybe directly impacted by. It's insecurity that the whole society is seeing, a drop in consumer demand due to that. Also the consumers are realizing more and more how much do we actually need. Actually, I have already a jacket. Do I really need a second and a third one? I have 5 t-shirts at home. Do I really need a 6th one? And this will, together with what we've been working on the last years, raising more awareness for sustainability, will lead to a point where there will be less demand. So again, like less need to produce huge amount of pieces. We'll also see that they will buy more, or the society will buy more into sports, casual and loungewear due to the decrease of occasional and more classical wear. And we will see that, and we saw that the society was impacted by it, by the closure of schools and crashes where you could give your baby, your newborn. The society was impacted by less income due to technical unemployment. So, for example, here we were asked to not work the full days of the week, may it be 6 or 5 days in the week, but we were asked to only work 3 days or 2 days or some not at all. And of course, then you make less money. You will have less income, less opportunity to put on savings, and stocks have been falling heavily, which is impacting the society and the single consumer within the society just as heavily, of course, as it is impacting the big companies. The environment actually has been positively impacted. We see a improvement within the air quality of about 30%, a reduction within the greenhouse gas emissions. There's also less commuting. People are less taking their car to work because they don't need to be in an office. The centers are being closed. We even saw some YouTube videos of animals coming back into the big cities because there were literally no people. This is a picture of my hometown, Berlin, at the Checkpoint Charlie, which is a huge tourist attraction. And usually this is packed of people. And now you see it's literally empty. Also in our society and the way that we co-live with another, we see that due to the closure of restaurants, musea, the schools, the bars, the cafes, and as well the opportunity to have other free time activities, also schools, gyms, sport clubs were closed. We will see that there is a shift and there will be a change within how we act with another. How the education is impacted, again, just a few examples here. Yeah, of course, you cannot benefit from your face-to-face tutoring within this period. There will not be the traditional fashion shows that, for example, I've witnessed with a lot of other schools that I've been working with, is always the big thing that every graduate and every student is, of course, looking forward. If you cannot organize a show, you have to find other ways to visualize and communicate your work. Students have been losing their side jobs, or many of them have been losing their side jobs. I was just being contacted by a professor from a school in south of Germany who told me about this because...
Excuse me, Michael, can I just interfere here?
Yeah.
Are the slides changing? Because over here, we cannot see any change in the slides.
Let me see, which one was the last one you've seen?
No, it's just the first slide that we have. We have not seen any change in the slides.
Oh, that's a pity. Good that you tell me, Malini, but I will anyway send this overview to you.
Oh, right, yes.
Let me see if it works now.
Yeah.
Maybe it stops after one.
Yeah. Now we can see this is the society slide that we have here.
Exactly. Good.
Okay.
Please inform me again if it breaks down.
Right.
So, is it now on full screen?
Yes.
Good. So, the next slide was about the education, and what we've been seeing here is that the last point I mentioned, the loss of side jobs. Many students like to work in a cafe or in a bar, a restaurant. If those are closed, or like to work in a clothing store, they lose the side jobs to finance the studies, for example. We also see that there is a need to switch to digital within the field of education. So this is also something that I included then in the opportunity, actually. And there's also on the downside a risk of loss in tactility, so the feeling for fabrics, the feeling for yarns. This is something, of course, on an individual base, every student has to continue with, but that exchange of tactility is just something which is very hard, even through all the digital tools we'll have. What can we do, or what are the opportunities raising from the post-COVID era? This is now another slide where I divided it by industry, society, again, brands, suppliers, retailers, consumers, environment, and education. Please let me know if you cannot see the slides, otherwise I'll continue. It's now divided by how the post-COVID era is resulting in measures and opportunities. What will be the measures that brands will need to take? Brands will need to focus again on who they are. I think this is something that you've seen the last years already. If you look at some brands and some designers, Armani, for example, is a brand, Giorgio Armani, which had years ago, they had a lot of sub-brands. Armani Exchange, Armani Sport, Armani Jeans, Burberry, the same thing, Jil Sander, very similar, and also Hugo Boss, for who I work. They had a lot of sub-brands that very much diluted the DNA of a brand. Now that there are such big economical challenges, they will close down a lot of these sub-brands and very much focus on who they are as a brand. Brands will also need to cut down on staff. This is something we have been seeing already. This is not positive, of course. It's a measure that has to be taken because it reduces the operative income that a brand, a company needs to create every month. And they will most likely cut down on collection size. They will cut down on the marketing budget, because these are all streams and exits where a lot of money is putting into, where they now need to save because they've been losing money and burning money over the last month. Out of these measures, also great opportunities arise. This is a good opportunity for a brand, a designer, even you as a student, to restart yourself, for a brand also to restart themselves, to refigure what they are actually doing here. You will see in the industry and in fashion brands that a lot of designer brands who didn't have a strong DNA, not a strong identity, it was not, for a consumer, it was not really clear what are they actually doing. They do a little bit of sportswear, they do a little bit of streetwear, they do a little bit of Classic. Those brands are the first that we already saw closing, not continuing, because the consumer is very much now buying by what they need. There's less of this occasionally buying, go into a store, find something, oh, that's nice, and buy it out of a fun, out of a nice situation reasoning. People now, what we see, are very much looking into, okay, I'm looking for a good shirt, so I go to this brand. I look for a good pair of trousers, this brand. And every brand that is not very clear on what they stand for in terms of brand values, but also in terms of product, will be having a very hard time in surviving this post-COVID era.
Your slides are still not changing.
Let me see.
Yeah. We are in the measures and opportunities slide right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, but
let me see. If I'm using it via this, is it now working?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah,
this is better.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Good. Anyway, for all of the participants, I will, like I said before, send out this overview. So what I've been talking about, you can then read afterwards. Go back to the brands. There will be less of a need for seasonality. There will be more time to design, basically. So what we've been seeing, and what also I heard from friends working in other companies, they reduce very much how big the collection is. And this offers the design teams, of course, to spend more time on their designs. So it will be not that much about having 10 jackets for winter season. It will be about having 2 jackets, but those really nice. And then in each of these 5 colors. So in the end, you end up again with your 10, but you have focus on the design. You can find new ways to communicate with your consumers. And again, here also the technical side, the digitalization side is very much impacting them. The measures and opportunities and the what is impacting the suppliers in a way that the suppliers will, and this is a negative side for the planet, of course, this is something we're seeing in sustainability is a big topic that was pushed very heavily in the last years, especially here in Europe. It was a big theme. You could almost not start selling your collections if you did not have anything very sustainable in the line. Now that the brands, the retailers, the suppliers are hit financially so heavy, we're actually expecting that the focus on sustainability will go down, especially in the first month. Most likely it will pick up again, and it's important that you keep working around this theme and this very important topic. It's important that, again, as the post-COVID generation of graduates, you have sustainability within your studies, and you can show it in your work. Just talking out of a sales and economical point of view, most likely this will take a dip in the beginning. The suppliers will also cut down on their new investments, like new technologies, unless they already have them installed. And they will, again, same as the brands, cut down on their staff. Most likely they will also cut down on the production size, because they will have, like I mentioned before, so much stock that also the brands and the retailers will say, first we'll just get the stock what you already produced from you, and then we're going to brief in new developments. They will also need to find new clients, because many brands will go down, or many brands will want to change to a different supplier, because this whole crisis has created an unbalance in the monetary balance between supplier and vendor and client. The opportunities that lie within here, same as for the brands. It's a great opportunity also for suppliers to restart themselves. It will be an opportunity and a need for them that they need digital ready staff. So again, here for the design students, something important, don't only think about the designer side working for a brand, but also I see, and I met a lot of former design students that work in vendors in production facilities and who support them in the design team of the factories, for example, where also here you need staff, you need co-workers and designers that are digital ready. So that can, for example, at least work with the Adobe programs or work with Clo3D, like digital simulation programs. Also, they will need staff that is able to use digital sampling tools. This is a good situation happened here a couple of weeks ago, where our supplier from India actually was closed already, our shirt supplier. But their graphic design team was still working. So what my designers did back then was they sent them a scan of the fabric we want to use and the structure and the colors. And then the design team of the factory in India was putting it on an avatar, which simulated very realistically how that garment could look like. So we didn't need any sample back then. And that was due to COVID-19 that we had to do the step. But similar to the consumers getting used to e-commerce and buying digitally, also this is something that could be something that is continuing and even has the opportunity to grow. There's less need for seasonality. It will be more stable units, more stable designs. A white shirt does not need a new design. You can produce it once, produce a couple of thousands, then take from that stock. And you can grow your business in new directions. Another thing that we've been seeing on the fabric side is that there is a lot of increase into like antiviral finishing, antibacterial coating. And also this, on the very professional side, I think is very interesting for students as well to think about the new level of comfort on the one hand side, but also the new level of function of garments. Like when you design a garment, it's about design, it's about silhouette, it's about your research and stuff, but also think about how a crisis such as the one we're now still living through is impacting the way that we dress, is impacting the way what we want to put on. And there we've seen a big growth in antiviral properties and finishes and sprays that are antibacterial, for example. On the retailers, measures that these retailers will take is that they will have less consumers due to less walking traffic. We will see fewer people on the streets going shopping. Again, they will have to cut down on stores and staff. They will have to cut down on the stock and the seasonality. They will not have that much space anymore to have all these units and goods stocked in their stores. They will have to rethink their business model and evaluate the order units. So evaluating the order units goes back to, do we need 10 jackets? Or should we rather buy 2 jackets? And when it's sold, it's sold. But unless otherwise we buy so many and then we have to put them all in sale. An opportunity for retailers is here that they can focus on what they actually sell. They can focus on who sells and to whom they sell. So they will close down all stores and retail point of sales which are not rentable, which are not creating a good business. The less need for seasonality means more stable units, similar to the suppliers. Means also that for a retailer, if they really believe in a great new t-shirt, they focus on that, not on the 5 other ones. They can find new angles to how to sell. So also here, the growth of digital. On the consumer side, measures that consumers will take is that they will invest less into apparel and luxury. In China, we've been seeing luxury grow again slightly, but not at all as heavily as before, because people are taking priorities and making priorities now. People will very much think about like, am I using the money that I have for buying new household goods in the place where I've been living the last 3 months, almost 24 hours, or am I investing it into a new watch, for example? Growth of comfort is to continue, commodity shopping instead of fun spending. and there will be less traveling and spending on transport due to the opportunity that also there was less need to go to the office. We also see that, for example, in the society aspect of it, people will get very used to home office, to working from home. Also, companies will get used to home office, and this is something that will not 100% go back into normal. So I also believe that after the crisis, more companies will offer up to these and allow people to stay at home, which will then also impact the way that that there is a negative impact on the nature and on the environment. The opportunities for the consumers is also that new brands will benefit from a change, like new brands that see this trend of apparel, of loungewear, can benefit from it. A new silhouette can rise from this, more relaxed, for example, more wider shapes. New style codes can develop from this, like I said before, with the occasional wear, with the attire and the attitude of wearing an office suit. Most likely this is not that necessary anymore. And there's less attitude, more emotion would be ideally coming out from this. It's less superficial, more emotional, what people will be looking into, which again is something interesting also when you work on your concepts or your designs. Think about really much the emotional aspect behind every design. The opportunities and the measures for the environment, and here I'm in the almost last part of my presentation, will be the measures for the environment is on the downside, that the focus on sustainability will decrease as other targets like rebuilding the business will come to a forefront. Businesses now are really much looking into how can they get profitable again, how can they create money again, and sustainability, spending even more money in most of the cases to have better quality garments is something that I hope in the future is something that brands will need, because they will need these less seasonality, more timeless pieces. And this you can only offer with good quality. But in the beginning, with the whole like down pricing, sales, and so on, most likely this will not happen. There will be also less rental and secondhand. This was a market that has been growing very large here in Europe. There was also, thanks to social media, a lot of platforms, almost like eBay or Amazon, where you could rent or buy secondhand designer clothing. Also here now, due to the security or the insecurity, the risks that people are still connecting to the virus, most likely this is something that will not continue grow and break down as long as the pandemic is still in the back of the mind of people. The opportunity for the environment is that it's a great chance to cool off, at least for a couple of seasons, at least for a period now. It had the opportunity to cool off. We've been seeing that the temperature went down a little bit. The skies are now as blue as never before. The water in Venice, for example, has been clearing up. Some resources were able to regrow. And ideally, in the long run, the society is also understanding or gets to realize that less can be more. And this, I think, is a great sentence to keep in mind, that less is more, less can be more. And it will be about growing timeless, natural styles and designs rather than volume, rather than huge amount of design. On the last point, what measures and opportunities I see for the education is that you've been all experiencing it in the way we're experiencing it just now. We had to deal with remote e-learning, online courses also. The measures that have been taken is the change of shows to video presentations, for example. Instead of a classical fashion show, you can do a video presentation. Your facilities might have been closed or the workshops closed. I know with a lot of fellow students and teachers that for some students who were really used to live in a small apartment or live with their parents, using the workshops in the school to work on their graduation collection, this was a nightmare because they had to work in the kitchen or work outside. There are closed sources for fabrics and trims, again, going back to the supplier side. And there is no steady exchange and contact, neither with your co-students or with your tutors. The opportunity within this is very much that both sides, the school, the tutors, the students, even later on, like your employers, have to learn new tools and apps for the future, but maybe these can be very inspiring. You have to investigate in how these can inspire fresh new ideas. You are forced to learn at home and find new solutions. You will have less of the steady exchange, but this can also lead into that you need to make, for example, your own fabrics. When you look on the measure side, that the sources for fabrics and trims are closed, the stores are closed, the mills are closed. What you can now work with is weaving your own fabrics, recycle, upcycle, experiment, basically. Try to cope with that situation and use it like an inspiring opportunity. Focus more on what is your vision as a designer, what is your vision as a student who wants to work in the fashion industry, what you want to say, be more clear upfront. I experienced a lot of meetings, for example, with students that were going on for weeks and weeks, not actually being clear of what they want to do with their studies or what they want to do in this industry. But this moment just now, and it's not, luckily it's not happening often that we're in such a moment like the one we're now today, is giving all of us a time to also reconsider and refocus on what we want to say, what's our vision, how can we be more clear upfront, also before a meeting, either with your tutors or with your future employer, and grow through this your own independence as well as your responsibility, and see the whole crisis, of course, is something hard to now see on the societal impact, on very personal side of it. Maybe there's in your family members impacted directly from it. Maybe you've been losing a job on this. This can all be, of course, very challenging moments. I've been seeing it now myself as well, because my job was also impacted by the crisis. But like with everything, you can only take every challenge that's upcoming as an opportunity to grow, and after that, look back on it and be proud of what you've achieved, and try to learn something that you can then give on and give forward like we do today. So this is it for the presentation from my side. Now I'm happy to hear your questions.
Yeah, there are a number of questions. I think you can see these questions here.
Let me see. Now it's still the shared screen. Yeah, so right. Let me see if I can see it here. Chat. Okay, I'll go to the beginning.
No, there is a Q&A.
Yeah.
What are your views on digitization, 3D
there
fashion?
I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your views on the digitalization, 3D fashion technology and resale markets? Yeah. Okay, different questions. Views on digitalization. Digitalization, first of all, I think is great to a level that what we are doing just now, getting in contact with another. It also has a big risk in terms of globalization, together with digitalization, that everything starts to look a bit the same in the area, that some brands and also designers are very heavily put under price pressure. But in general, I think it can be a great tool, especially if you find an interesting way of how you make use of it already as a student. 3D fashion is also something where many, including myself, have been skeptical in the beginning, because I was I like to draw by hand. I like to drape fabric. I like to stitch it and then see it, feel it, and so on. But again, through this crisis and through the one example I mentioned, I saw that actually it can become quite handy. And there's also some programs now that make it look very realistic, that can help designers, brands to be very clear in what they want to sell before even having to produce it. So in the long run, also in terms of sustainability, it can help that we produce less actual garments and we simulate them more in 3D. Resale markets, I think I mentioned it in the last slide a bit, is more resale market again, is something that really much makes sense, especially in terms of sustainability. I'm just afraid that due to people still thinking about, oh, is there a risk of or danger that I could infect myself? Resale right now, and also secondhand stores and resale in platforms like eBay, for example, will be not that strong, but maybe it's something that is coming up again. Then,
how is your brand working currently?
Yeah. Okay. Denim. First of all, I need to correct you there a little bit. Like denim, of course, is not the most environment-friendly industry, same as leather, to begin with. But what we have been looking into, especially with Lee and with my own jeans and design, was always like, what other opportunities are there? What other possibilities do we see in finishing, for example? And when you say that denim is not environmentally friendly, this is very much not just the denim itself, but the finishing of the denim. So just for all of you as an understanding, also the growing the cotton is what takes the most of the water. So this is not something that is particularly for denim. That has the biggest impact. What is then and used to be in the past a very negatively environmentally impacting factor is the finishing of it, the chemicals that have been used, the bleach that has been used, the potassium permanganate, which is something that brightens up some areas in the denim, have been used. But this is something, and I'm now working with denim since 10 years, where in the last 2 years, I've been seeing almost very little still happening. There's a great rise in raw denim, so denim that is actually not treated at all, where you would only have to consider the dyeing and the grow of the cotton. So again, like the water you would use for growing the cotton, that any other garment producer that would use cotton would have. Also in the terms of finishing, these chemicals or these classic traditional chemicals have been exchanged by, for example, use of laser and chemicals that are less harmful for the environment up to not being harmful at all. There used to be a resin that you apply on your jeans. Try not to become too technical here, but whenever you start treating a denim, you normally spray it with a resin. And that resin used to have a lot of chemicals inside. And this one has now, for example, been exchanged for potato starch. And so it has similar options, similar possibilities, but those are more and more now changing to get exchanged. How the brand is working currently, considering denim, which is not... considering it's denim, the brand is also not producing only denim, and there's a nice share of our denim which is totally raw, up to a big share, the biggest share of all the denim that is labeled as a green finishing label. So You can always calculate from your fabric to your finishing. You calculate together and then divide by the different working steps and by the energy that has been used, the water that has been used, the chemicals that have been used, to get a score that is telling you, is the final product creating a lot of stress for the environment, or is it not having a big impact on it? And there we could see and reach within the last seasons already an increase of starting from like 20% to up to 60, 80%, up to also the seasons which now are really, really good and which show a lot of sustainable fabrics also used for the denim, which are waiting in stock, waiting to be shipped. I hope this is,
I just wanted to ask you, you did say something about raw denim, there is no washes on denim. So how is the fabric softened? Denim is slightly harsher when it's unwashed.
Yeah.
So how is the softening done if it is raw denim that way?
You have both sides. One, especially often it's men that like that it's really stiff. The denim is very stiff and heavy, and because if it's not as soft, the wearing pattern, like where you bend your knees, where you sit, where your knees get scratched on the floor, for example, these contrasts are hitting in stronger when it's unwashed, untreated. If you want to make your raw denim without any use of water a bit more softer, you could tumble it. Either you tumble it in the washing machine, which of course then creates energy, or you would tumble it yourself. Use of some golf balls, for example, in a net. Or what you could also do is try to soften up the raw denim with as little water as needed. And I think there you could already, it would be enough to already work with maximum of 3 liters for one pair of jeans. And there you wouldn't even need to add lots of softener or stuff. You could just use the water, line dry it, then work with the denim. If it's in the wet stage and you crinkle it by hand, hang it again, let it line dry. These are all steps that in the end make it softer. The best way also is it may start very stiff and hard, but the longer you wear denim, the more the fibers are opening up and the softer it gets. This is always like why I like to start with a raw pair of denim, and then if you've been wearing it for a year, maybe it gets really, really soft.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see the next question. COVID-19 has totally disrupted the world. What is the chance of sustainable fashion? Yeah, you're right. That's what I also wanted to include in the presentation. Very much there is a chance still. It will not be the biggest focus or not the first priority, I guess. But in the long run, answering your question on like what is the chance of sustainable fashion, if brands, designers are reacting to what consumers are looking for, and this most likely will be timeless pieces, less seasonality, more like, okay, now I'm buying a t-shirt, but I want to wear this t-shirt for at least 10 years. So this t-shirt can be a little bit more expensive, but then if it's a bit more expensive, I want to know what makes it more expensive. And then is a good moment to come in with a sustainable fashion to explain in a way why mostly the prices are more expensive, but also to understand or make the consumer understand the value of the garments, of the goods that you're selling. There is the chance of sustainability also in the way we produce, and design. It begins with actually. Sustainability can also grow from the point that the collections will be smaller, that there will be less goods produced to begin with. Can also grow with the first question that I answered on, like what my point of view on 3D design is that the moment, for example, we can create collections that might be totally or 100% digital, we will not need any sampling, and the partners from us could only make their order on a digital design, and then only really what every partner is actually 100% sure they will sell is also going to be produced. Now, the last decades, it has been actually a very, in hindsight, ridiculous system of producing way too much than any brand is selling. That's why even big outlet formats such as TK Maxx had the opportunity to grow. eBay you started to grow. Off-price segments started to grow. They created some chains, some shops that only live off the overproduction from brands. And this is just a ridiculous circle. And this is also then leading to that there were more seasons needed. So besides the whole like human stress factor that lies within this is of course a great stress for the environment. It's a great stress for the suppliers, the producers, the retailers to sell everything that has been produced. And I just believe that after COVID-19 and after COVID-19, like you said, totally disrupted the world. And after business is slowly picking up again more, now you see it in the stock market, that the stock market is going up again. So there is a good climate for consumption. There's a good climate for business showing. Would have been much worse if you wouldn't see anything. It's just way less still. So the moment this will pick up again, and the moment debts are being paid, and the moment the brands that are not strong enough close down, sustainability is something that has been pushed so heavily over the last decades that it just has to be picked up again and fully. And it's also something where I think brands cannot allow themselves to now put in break here or put it on hold, because also in terms of the setup, big brands have their own departments now only focusing on sustainability. Schools have been teaching sustainability within their curriculum. There is still a great chance for sustainable fashion. And I also believe that a couple of months after COVID-19 and its effect is totally slowing down, or has been slowed down and has stopped, there will be again even a growth for demand, or growth of demand for sustainable fashion. What do you think about upcoming designers? What can they change in them and their design to sustain or to even think of any future? Good. Think of any future, I think, is always a great thing to do, especially in times like these now. Upcoming designers now, more than maybe 30, 40 years, even before I was born ago, it's unfortunately, we're not in a time like in the 80s, where especially here in Europe, upcoming design was super desired, and there was less of a presentation of design. People really had to dig into, visit Antwerp, for example, to discover designers and stuff. Now, due to also social media and digitalization, to answer the previous question, of course, there is a bigger exposition of everyone's work, which again is a great opportunity. There have always been hundreds and thousands of designers every year. There have always been millions of ideas, but there have also always been these 100 to 1,000 great ideas that no one ever had before. So what I just believe is a good opportunity is when, for example, we see this whole change for us as a need to rethink, like in my last point, what is the vision for us as a designer? What is my collection supposed to do? What change can I have, every one of us, for the industry? And also, again, here, plan your studies or consider this within the studies, I can just recommend, like when I was a student here in Antwerp, sustainability nobody cared about. Out of a necessity, because I didn't have money for fabrics, I was collecting leather trash and cutting it and make some fabrics with it. But sustainability back then was not a big topic. What now I think is the opportunity is that you already include for yourself in your final collection the field of sustainability, and you already think about like the digital design and how you present your work digitally. Like if you wouldn't have the opportunity to show it in a big fashion show, in the end, how many hundred people could even see that show? It's more important that you learn already within the field of your studies. How can you use new technology to represent your work as a designer, and get clarity for yourself? What's your vision as a designer and as an upcoming designer and as someone who's in future working for a company? Good. Ayushi, every store has their collection, they have season. What if a company had started with their collection, even if they have made some of them, so how they will be able to sell their product to sustain in the industry? Yeah, I think this, if I understand you correctly, this is about that every store already has the actual season. Now, due to COVID-19, these stores are closed. When they started with their collection, even if they have made some of them, somehow they will be able to sell their product. I'm not sure if I get the question right, but let me answer it in a way that how I interpret it now, and I interpret it in a way that
I think she's just asking about, they've made a collection according to a particular season and trend, and how would they want to sell it if they are unable to sell it in this particular season?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a bit going to the slide you might not have seen, but only hear me talking about, which is about how retail, for example, is affected by it. And what the stores will now do, and the brands and the retailers, because they're all in it together, will now do is that they will try to off-price heavily the collections that they have in the store. So you will see a lot of minus 60%, minus 50% sales all over the stores and brands, because you just have to get rid of your garments. In the worst case scenario, actually, and this is of course something that's really, really bad in terms of sustainability. I also heard about some brands that burn their goods, because renting a stock facility is more expensive than what they could make from selling it off price. Ideally, you could sell it still for the original price, but I don't think that this will often happen. Then people will start going into off pricing, so putting it into sale. If this one's still not working, they will try to use either their own outlets, or they will work together with outlet retailers. So retailers that only are specialized in buying that outlet from other brands. And I guess that this is also a good format, actually, that in the next month will make a lot of money, because they will be very heavily needed in helping to reduce the big stock.
In your presentation at one particular time, you said that, the winter-ready garments may be sold in summer. And this may be back to, the spring-summer that is done for 2021. Would it be sold in 2022 then as a...
That was a good solution that we found then, and that other brands also found. And my girlfriend also works for a big global chain where I heard that they are doing the same. So that actually makes sense because you've created everything of that already, and then you just need to make sure that it seasonally works somehow. What we also did was, for example, the summer 21, or what was it? A summer 21 collection showed some pieces that could work in your pre-fall 21. Because the way that the seasons go and the way that also our climate has changed, the pre-fall is the highest drop in terms of temperature. So you could still, like, although you don't ship everything from the summer, take some pieces out from it that is already produced anyway and move it later on. And this is, I think, something that a lot of brands will do now. They will try to either season by season, only with a different year, move a summer 20 into a summer 21 or a fall 20 into a fall 21, or they will try to pick and choose some elements. And still, there might also be some product that will not be able to be carried over or to be used. And this is something, of course, that is in terms of sustainability not great. But it's also, if we know that due to this situation, that our consumers, our customers, so the stores that are buying from us, for example, will not be able to buy, let's say, 20 pieces. They can only buy 10 pieces. Why would you need a collection that is 30 pieces big? So you would cut down here already the size of your collection, cut it down to only the styles where you know that they will be bought in big volume, and everything else where you already now see under old circumstances that might have worked, under the new circumstances, this will be a direct NP, like a non-produced item. Doesn't make sense, because again, for sampling, you would ask your your supplier to produce, let's say, 80 jackets for one style, where you know nobody's buying. So it's 80 samples for nothing, which is totally not sustainable. So also here, still before we've been selling anything of it, we have been saying, okay, let's reconsider, take this off, take this off, take this off.
The next question is, where will couture and luxury fashion stand in the post-COVID era?
Good question, because it's also interesting here to look at it from a global standpoint. We've been seeing Russia being super strong in the luxury segment and China being super strong. China has been, of course, hit as the first and one of the heaviest under the crisis of COVID-19, is now slightly picking up again. But at the same time, the strongest area within China, not even full part of China, Hong Kong, has to deal with other political issues right now. So also in Hong Kong, we see that the economy is still very low, and it was always a good hub for selling luxury fashion. In Russia, we will still see like how heavily the pandemic is hitting them. In the other areas, we also witnessed that before the crisis, actually, there was more reduction of luxury fashion to be witnessed and to be seen. I think stronger than the couture, the luxury fashion in maybe the more traditional sense, there will be a made-to-measure offer. So it will be, again, like going into this, how many pieces do I actually need? For men, it could be that there will be more made-to-measure suiting. So instead of buying 3 suits from 3 different designer brands, I want to have 1 suit made for myself, which with a tailor, I can always get it altered, repaired, and ideally keep very much as this timeless piece that it originally should always have been. This is the ideal take, of course, that I hope it would take. I learned myself with a traditional tailor in Berlin in Germany, and we've been seeing that back then, about 15 years ago, there was not a lot of demand for it. But ideally, with this reduction of a lot of seasonal, a lot of big volume of pieces, more focused pieces, less is more, there could actually be a good opportunity in considered, personal, shopping experience through couture and luxury fashion, but then translated into a more of a made-to-measure market. Next. Does sustainability necessarily need to cost more? Use of digital fashion can save money, for example. Yes, of course. It's also, I think here, similar to the discussion we are having today, the field is just super huge. Only on the certificates, for example, we need, in terms of sustainability, to label a garment. There has been a book in the office that's this big, and it's with thousands of certificates. So it's a great, great field, huge in the different elements it's impacting. And to answer your question, does sustainability necessarily need to cost more? Doesn't need to. The use of digital fashion, like you say, can also save money. It will, in the long run, help companies to produce less samples, to be more effective in their planning. And where sustainability still costs more, and I'm surprised that it's still like this most of the time. There's also some builds that have been improving this, but where sustainability still costs more is in the sourcing of the fabrics. There are a few examples where I've experienced that it's even cheaper, because that would actually make sense that the recycled fabric should be cheaper, not more expensive. But when you look into a comparison between a tencel, lyocell, linen, hemp compared to polyester yarn, for example, there's still a discrepancy of natural fibers being more expensive than man-made fibers. I actually believe that it would be better if there would be some sort of regulation or a fee on these man-made fibers that would ban them from being that cheap, that in the end, actually polyester fiber would be more expensive than a natural fiber. Otherwise, you will never balance this out. Because if you look into big vertical chains, there is still a huge use of man-made polyurethane, polyester fibers that have been used, that in the long run is not helping the sustainability chain in terms of circularity, for example. There's very much something that is then produced only for a single use. And if you want to tackle sustainability, I think greatest is to think about the cradle to cradle aspect of it, from the sourcing to the making to the giving it away or donation of a garment. How can you close the whole circle? There are some other examples where sustainability doesn't need to cost more, but where, for example, as a brand, you can charge more. And this is not to sound like it's a cheating or anything, but it's something that, for example, people are willing to pay more for a garment that is so clean, that has such a good label to read through, how it's been made, where it's made. In the end, it must not have cost anymore, but you can sell it more because people are willing to pay more for it. And ideally also here, brands are then not using this money that they make more to put it in their own pockets. People will use that money to give back to the community, to support, for example, a non-governmental organization. And this is a good example where sustainability can rise from a sourcing, a production, more like fabric and product related sustainability, into the field of social sustainability. So social sustainability, I think, especially now after this era, is a big area which which doesn't have to cost a lot, and which can also help the brands to grow and improve their image when it comes to what you are expecting from it. And again, this is also for a student something which with the school in Denmark we have been working on a broad field of social sustainability, where you could think already like, is there a way that I design my next collection together with my community? together with a home for the elderly, for example, and then see like what's the great opportunity of fashion design, that it is first and foremost its product, but the product can very much help also a community and can raise money that can then be donated for bigger and better cause. Then post-COVID-19, how relevant will fashion be? Because with the downfall of economy and unemployment, will people really prefer to buy new clothes, or would they rather choose to spend that money on something else, which is more essential? How would the fashion industry survive that kind of consumer behavior? I think fashion will always be relevant. It's something, if you look back hundreds of years ago, also when mankind and society was hit heavily by wars, for example, and by other economical crises, there was always fashion even rising from this fact, and there will always fashion be. I think what we see and what we will see the next season and the next seasons is, yes, there will be a downfall in the economy. There is growth within the unemployment, and people will prefer not to buy a lot of new. I think people will make more decisions in really defining what am I spending my money on, where will I spend money on, what is a brand that I believe in. There are still brands that you see that are still growing. There are still brands such as Patagonia, for example, that have a very transparent and interactive way of communicating their brand values, that have been hit less heavy, and brands that use the crisis in a positive way to give back, to donate, to support, that turned, for example, you have seen the images of LVMH, I think it was, turning their sample factories into making scrubs for hospital workers, or make mouth masks. Perfume, luxury companies used their facilities and factories to produce disinfectant instead of perfumes and stuff. So the industry will always be there. Also fashion industry will always be there, and also people will always want to consume fashion. I just, when was it? Yeah, 2 days ago, was here in the big shopping street in Antwerp, and it was packed again with people. A lot of people also waiting in front of sneaker stores, where I was surprised of, where you could also, like going back to your question, could think of, if people stayed, for example, at home the last month, where they would not have been wearing any shoes, would they now really see the need to buy new pairs of shoes? But there were long queues of people waiting. And I've seen also in front of big chains, big retail chains, there were a lot of queues, long queues of people waiting to shop again. So I think it will, in the beginning, impact also very much the amount, but that will then, once there is an economical reorganization and there is regrowth to be seen, also some countries and some nations, you see that they are handing out vouchers now, that people need to spend money. And this is all in the long run, of course, like aiming to that they get the economy running again. And once we see economy running again, there's also always fashion. Just the way that we will consume fashion and the amount of especially seasonal fashion we will consume will most likely be in the long run impacted by the crisis. And this will go back to what I mentioned before, that there is this less is more mentality going to happen, and that brands as well as consumers will very much refocus themselves on what they really need. What are the different things we can explore on during the COVID with very minimum resources? What you can explore. So what you can work on, for example, as a student, is working with what you have. Work with all your research and resources, all your own garments, all your own fabrications and materials, to create something new, to find the new in the old, if you will, to find the innovation out of the need. A lot of trends, for example, came up after First World War. New trends, new silhouettes were founded there, and that was due to a need. Other silhouettes and new trends came up after Second World War. It was always that due to a rationalization, due to a scarcity of not having that many resources, new things, new silhouettes, new designs, new ways of designing have to build up, just because also the people are just a creative kind, and they want to work with this challenge that they see now. The very limited resources is also for every individual, I think, to again, reconsider what they want to do with their impact on the industry that every one of you will at one moment have. And it's a great opportunity, and it's a great time to think about where is my individual strength. Have I been, for example, particularly interested in knitting 1 year ago? Now is a great time to start working on it again and make it maybe my specialty. Have I been interested in printmaking or graphic design? I might be a fashion designer, but graphic design is also impacted by this. How can I see a concept not only focused on what inspires me as a designer in terms of sketching and silhouette and research, but also how can a concept be that much bigger and broader and include also social, cultural elements when I'm doing my research. And this is all things that I think we were not that much forced to consider maybe 5 years ago, but which is for now a good opportunity and a good moment to think about. For price-sensitive markets with that like of India, should one be focusing on low-volume premium clothing or mass production? I think it's going to be low-volume premium clothing. And this is also something that I see with friends of mine working for example, mass production brands that add on to their portfolio now a mass production premium element. So that might sound a bit confusing now, but what they will now look into, or what consumers, I believe, look into now, is just from the volume, buy less, spend ideally less, but spend maybe even a bit more, but shop less, because also the whole like shopping experience became less interesting. So I think low volume premium clothing, but also lower premium. Just I think there's not only the strict differentiation between mass production and premium luxury. There's a lot of things in between, a lot of brands and a lot of levels in between, where you could think, for example, of accessible premium, like, and there's mass production. If you look into H&M, for example, they have a lot of brands that are sub-brands, maybe like a COS and other stories. Arket is a new one that they opened here in Europe. This is affordable luxury. It's not that mass as their main chain. It's not as low volume as the traditional premium, but it's somewhere in between. This is something to consider. This is something to consider from both angles. Could you imagine a low volume premium brand opening up itself also to more accessible product, and vice versa? Can you imagine a mass production clothing company trying to refocus their offer and improving their value? Like, although they're maybe renowned to be a mass production, reduce it, sell it for more, use better quality. Will there, yeah?
Yeah, no, I'm just reading out the question for you. Will there be a revised pricing strategy?
I think, like I said in the beginning, yes, but in terms of that people just need to get rid of stock, basically. So they will down price everything, or there will be a lot of sales going on. And then the revised pricing strategy, to be really honest, I don't know. I can imagine that there will be a revised margin calculation in terms of once that there is the less seasonality at one side, smaller collection, no need to sample everything because of the use of 3D, for example. All this is playing positively, or all this is working positively for your margin calculation when you produce goods. But that you could already work with this takes seasons to go back the line, because there's still all this old or traditionally made product being produced or has been produced that is in your warehouses. The pricing strategy, I believe, could be revised, but still on an individual level, brand by brand. Ideally, of course, there would be one shared common alignment of what would be needed for all brands to all agree and align another on a revised pricing strategy. I don't think this will ever happen, because there is just every brand, every company is just too egoistic thinking in this way. But in the long term, also, I guess the consumer and what the consumer is buying is very much shaping the pricing strategy and how this might be revised. Like the moment that, for example, everything that I've been saying before, that I guess that, or I believe that the consumers will buy less and better, maybe I'm totally wrong, and it will start up that consumers are buying like crazy cheap mass-produced product again, then there will for sure not be a revised pricing strategy for that segment as we know it. As people, if people would not buy anything, and I don't think this is going to happen because it doesn't look like it, then there might be a revised pricing strategy, which has to happen within each company, between the retail or the distribution, the brands internally, and the suppliers, because everyone is depending on another. How will fashion weeks be working post-COVID? Are they going to be same, or digitalization would be undertaken in that as well? I think it will be very much be digitalized. Some already did it. I think Armani, was it in the Milan Fashion Week? They did it fully digital. I also spoke to some schools, which like in my example, always used to have this big fashion show. They were not able to do it. They still wanted to give their students, of course, the opportunity to show what they've been working on. So some schools, for example, do now a big live stream where every student is showing their collection or their work they've been working on in a short video clip. And this is, yeah, maybe this I've never seen it, but I can imagine it can be very interesting, because it will be very, very different. And the show, of course, has to be also that flexible that, for example, for 100 students, there will be always the same background. There will be almost the same type of models used. Music you might be able to change, light you might be able to change, but if 100 students, every one of them can make their own video, that would be way more supporting the character than any show could ever do. So I think that the fashion weeks as such will for now turn also more and more in digital, as well as the question, do we need fashion weeks as such? Because fashion weeks have also been used to basically communicate your work, communicate your product. Once companies, designers, retailers get so fit, so good and professional with using digital tools, so that they, for example, have a live stream with with a model walking same time. There's a 3D animation. This viewers can see it from every angle, can see different price markups and stuff that could lead to a version of a fashion week that we would have never imagined could happen, and that would not force anyone to take a plane to fly from Japan to Paris. Again, this would help the sustainability. Will it in the long run mean that it would negatively impact the fashion industry? This could also happen. Everything is open now. That's the tricky thing and the beauty of it. I try to believe in the positive side of it, and I hope that great creativity and innovation will be needed out of this, and people, brands have to react to it, and they will find and need to find new ways of reacting to it. As we talk about building a sustainability fashion industry, what are we going to do about brands that have laid off thousands of its employees? Can we consider it ethical? Yeah. Ethical not. Is it sustainable? If you would want to be really challenging, maybe it's even sustainable, because in the very just in a very original way of the word sustainability, to sustain, to continue to live in a way, every brand will explain you that they lay off these thousands of employees, because otherwise they would have to lay off triple the amount of thousands of employees. It's a good way for them to save money. Is it ethical? Not always. Most of the times not. Just a brand will tell you they had to lay off 20 people, because if they wouldn't have laid off these 20 people, in 6 months from now, they might have to close down completely. And then it's 600 people impacted, and then it's the suppliers impacted, and then it's the retailers impacted, and it's the stock owners are impacted. So this is always a way how people will explain it to you, that it sounds ethical. It might even be ethical in a way that laying off some people will make it possible for others to keep their jobs. And it also might be sustainable in the most original meaning of the word. It of course doesn't cover every single personal situation and everyone who's personally affected by it. Like I said, I was also affected by it, and I cannot say that it was ethical. I can say that it might be sustainable for the brand, but is it ethical? No. But in the way that I've just been explaining it, like it's a need for a brand. It's a necessary decision a brand needs to take in terms to sustain and survive. It is sustainable. What it means, or what some brands have been very much got under pressure and under fire for in the last month, and which is really not ethical, I believe, is when they skip payments to their suppliers. And this is something which you've been seeing also on social media and on LinkedIn, for example. A lot of factoring countries have been impacted by this, of course, that thousands of goods that have been produced, the brands were just skipping the payment and they were just canceling the order while it was already produced. So this is neither ethical nor is it sustainable. Even if they would not be able to sell everything right now, at least they need to pay the supplier who is producing it, because also the supplier then has to pay the workers, of course. Is the shift to online stores good for the environment as it involves a lot of shipping? Good question. No. The increase of shipping is, of course, not good for environment. It's also depending here, will we see an improved way of shipping goods? We see, for example, now already from Germany, there is the opportunity to choose in the way that you get your goods shipped. So there's like an eco delivery, which is I think is running maybe with electro-driven cars, post cars and stuff. We're also thinking about sending out drones, which could deliver the packages. For now, I think if it remains the traditional way of shipping, it will not be good for the environment. It will more be something, okay, if you consider the traditional brick and mortar, which again is your everyday store, which has the energy, mostly the energy that is running to behold. In comparison to the online shipping, if the methods of distribution is not changing for the better, it will not be better for the environment. At the same time, I'm just afraid that the whole rise of e-com and what made the people now realize how easy it is will not go down. People will still enjoy the comfort of ordering it. So if we would like to get the shipping methods and so on better, then we need a higher tax on online shipping, and we need to make, for example, the shipping costs higher. I think that could be the only solution for now, because the demand of it will not go down. What are the pros and cons of starting up during this time? Starting up a new label, I can imagine, or starting working for a company. The pro or the cons of starting up now is what we said before. People will be more short on their money, I guess, especially if it's in the first month and if it's very high price. But this most likely or ideally is then changing afterwards. The pros, which is almost like lifting it up here, is that people are very open now for changes, and people are expecting and hoping for changes. So whoever is able to bring in this change, either it's via a new technology or it's via a different new way of communicating, or it's through to donating, will have a lot of attention, which when the whole industry was dominated by huge conglomerates and huge chains and stuff, which are now also under big pressure. You were, for example, not even having time to stand up against those big players. Now it's the good moment where everybody has to reconsider, replan how their brand should be looking like, and with everything that is being cut down, also there's opportunity to get into that slot what other brands have been closing down, or to come up with a new idea.
What exactly should be the stylist's role in the post-COVID era, especially in an editorial field?
Okay, so this is not on the designer then, it's really on the stylist. Stylists, as I've been seeing it now, especially in the period, have had a lot of difficulties and challenges, because most of them were working freelance. You were not allowed to attend any photo shoots. You were not allowed to travel, which is also a big thing. So I've seen many stylists now having a huge downside after this crisis. A stylist's role, however, in the post-COVID-19 era, I think, especially in the editorial field, is to support bringing awareness in the way that we style, in the way that what we shoot, how we shoot it, make positive use, so not abuse, but make positive use of how emotionally sensitive people are now, and to find a credible and honest connection between the product, which in the end design is and fashion is, with the emotions that we're all having, and don't go back to normal as it was, because still people are affected by it. Still people will be affected by what happened to them weeks ago. So always keep that in mind. Consider it when you work in the editorial field. Consider it when you're working for photo shoots. But also here, make good positive use of the situation that we're in right now, and use it to shape a direction that is bringing back positiveness, that is bringing back proximity between people to another, but also between the industry and the society. How will brands deal with the garments produced for the current season?
I think this you have already answered. So
yes.
Maybe we can skip this question.
How will fashion forecasting work considering the situations like these in future? How will the fashion forecasting work considering the situations like these in future? How will fashion forecasting work in future considering the situations like these, I guess? So what you saw, maybe there are two big websites I like to look at. One is Business of Fashion, and one is WGSN. And the Business of Fashion works with McKinsey. It's a big consultancy company, and they always bring every year the state of fashion. So I don't want to make too much, it's not supposed to be commercials here, but what they've been, both of them, WGSN and Business of Fashion, immediately did a couple of weeks within the crisis was that they reworked their state of fashion and their big fashion forecast deck and their forecast work, and they adapted it to the pandemic. And I think this is also another thing where in fashion forecasting, the fashion forecasting, same as fashion, will not die or go away. It will just take different shape, and it will mold itself into the new environment, and will mold itself into the expectation that is raised against it, or that is risen against it, and that we're asking these agencies, for example, to support us with. And the fashion forecasting nowadays is way more also respecting and including elements like the antibacterial coating, the finishing aspect of it is also considering, like, imagine a world where the balance from traditional market is selling in the store to digital is like this, traditional to digital is going to here. How would this affect you as a designer? So these are all forecast areas which will remain. Just the job field and the different scale and scope within the fashion forecasting work will have to adapt to more social cultural than even before. Fashion was always a social cultural aspect also, and always had that aspect covered, but it will also consider way more like how within the pandemic consumers and brands were hit, but also like how now after post-pandemic, and this is almost something where you have to make a forecast every week, is changing and is adapting to it. So I think there will be a lot of forecasting ideas almost the next weeks and months, and then there will be, once it all calm down a bit more, those will add up to being again more like on a seasonal level. Your views on digital promotions on various platforms of social media for the brands, creating opportunities for us as a student. What are my views on digital promotions on various platforms? Yeah, so that, for example, I would now answer as platforms of social media such as Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, to name a few, is good. I wouldn't overdo it. I would make sure that you only show also here the best of your work. It's a great new opportunity that, for example, when I was a student, didn't have in that scale. I had maybe Pinterest was there to show some images, but think about it as also, there are always some classic staples like your curriculum vitae, your CV, your portfolio. But start with these two, for example, and see them under the light or in the light of new various platforms of social media. Like, is there an opportunity that you do a digital portfolio that is linked with your YouTube channel? Would you have your own or separate Instagram account where you only show your work in progress? And you never know. I mean, those things usually come for free, so why not use them and make usage of them? And I think that you can work with them is definitely not bad, because the moment you will start working with the company, there will be a lot of fellow workers that, for example, cannot work with them, and then you have a benefit. Yeah. As you said, we still have some time, Malini?
Yes, we've overshot the time. Now, if you would want to answer these questions in written later, that's okay with us. You seem tired too. You've been talking for the past 2 hours.
Yeah, I will. Let me screen grab them or
Okay.
copy paste them, and I'll write you to them.
Right. Yes. Thank you very much for being a part of this particular session and sharing your thoughts. It was really informative. We would look forward for these answers, because students have been actively participating in asking these questions. They would love to hear from you. So, if you could just, all students, maybe, he would give us the answers. He would answer them in written to us. It's been a long session for him too. I hope you all understand it. Thank you very much, Michael, for being here and spending your time. Dr. Vandana, would you want to say a few words?
Yes, I would love to like to thank Michael, because your positive, this thing about how the markets have started opening up, how people are coming and buying, how your connection of that with the business of fashion news, that fashion will not die away and go away. It will just take another view. I'm sure this must have cheered up the students who are waiting to join the industry. It is a difficult time, but as you said, we all have to learn to live with it and see how we are going to work on it. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Right. And Michael, your presentation, because it got stuck in the beginning, if you could just email it to me, that would be nice. I would share
Great.
it amongst. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll be in touch with you on email.
Thank you all very much for having me. Thank you for the questions. It was a pleasure. 2 hours talking straight is always nice. And I already have the mail with the presentation. So sorry again that it was stuck, but then you can read through all the different points. Good. Have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, Birendra.
Yes.
ये questions वो सब तो हमारे पास
Just 1 minute, ma'am.